I'm Susanna, this is Jack. We are from Searle, Waldron Architecture, and we're presenting Joyce Chapel Bridge today. This bridge is kind of a functional pedestrian connection, and it's also a place for memorial reflection. It's located in a cemetery, Fawkner Memorial Park, which is in the north of Melbourne. The bridge is a pedestrian connection between the crematorium and Joyce Chapel, which are located to the north, and the visitor car park to the south, and it replaces a pre-existing dilapidated bridge structure which was demolished as part of the works. It's also nestled amongst the eucalypt fringe banks of the Merlynston Creek, which winds through Fawkner Memorial Park. This is master planned by Charles Heath, who designed Fawkner Memorial Park in 1906. He was an innovative early 20th century cemetery designer, and he was interested in merging ideals of the City Beautiful movement with Australian landscape qualities. Part of his master plan incorporated these radial avenues which would end at key junctions with important buildings within the site, and one of those is Joyce Chapel. And so the bridge is actually located as a part of 3 bridge crossings, and it's just to the sort of bottom left. In the early 20th century, cemeteries were actually becoming places of respite and leisure in a way, and there was an emerging garden cemetery movement. And these are images from a publication on Fawkner Memorial Park, and the images are right near where the bridge is. Fawkner Memorial Park is also an interesting landscape of functional memorials and follies. And so for us, these things meant that the bridge was an opportunity to create another piece of memorial infrastructure which would be embedded within this landscape. Its design reinterprets the pre-existing 1930s garden bridge, which had a strong central circular culvert that you can see on the right-hand side there. This bridge was actually really innovative for its time. Built in the 1930s, it incorporated landscape planters, and the idea was that as you cross the bridge, you were immersed within landscape, and so that was a really important thing for us. The bridge, though, had been unused for quite a number of years. It had been shut down due to structural decay, and it no longer met sort of safety requirements. You can see the balustrades are pretty low, or sort of flood requirements for 100-year flooding, or any of the waterway guidelines. So one of the interesting things about the project was these competing interests between sort of Heritage Victoria, the Fawkner Memorial Park is on the State Heritage Register, and how we would build a new structure that could meet Melbourne Water's functional requirements, but also kind of talk to the poetry that the client was really interested in. So these are some of the design heritage responses and strategies in terms of how we would reveal and conceal landscape and reveal and conceal views to the creek, incorporate the planter, reference the kind of circular culvert, and very much retain the symmetry of the original bridge, all really important principles. This is an image of the existing bridge. So we kept really fundamental key things like the extension of the existing paving across the bridge. We took that, we salvaged it, we reused it. The location of the bridge, the kind of width of the bridge and the planters were all kind of retained. But then the new bridge does things like it has a clear span across the crossing. The culvert was actually creating kind of structural issues because things were getting stuck in it, and it also introduces balustrades and other things that kind of meet modern day requirements. So symmetrical, I guess also really important was this clear and legible pathway. So essentially you can see you park your car here, and if you're a mourner, you essentially are walking across this bridge to get to your funeral service at the chapel on the other side. Other constraints that were really important was making sure that we retained the existing canopy trees. It's a really beautiful landscape, and so there was really careful kind of placement of footings and structure. The symmetry and layout of the bridge creates a wide paved path for large groups to approach the chapel, so you can get hundreds of people turning up at the same time, and then the bridge can be very quiet as well. So it needs to oscillate between these kind of really high capacity moments and low capacity. And the central axis is framed by planters, seats and semicircular voids, which allow you to kind of view the creek below. The circular geometry, oh gosh, we've gone right to the end. Okay, sorry, preview. Whoa, okay, there's some stuff coming. The circular geometry and the subtle brick colours, which shift from charcoal to red, were integral to reinterpreting the rough materiality and character of the original structure, and it used red brick and lava stone, and so we looked at how we could integrate that into the kind of change in the bricks used on the structure. And the distinctive circular geometry of the pre-existing concrete culvert is sort of reinterpreted in these circular voids which occurred in plan but also in elevation. The designs had to seek to find common ground, as I sort of said, between these competing authority requirements, a structure that would talk to the heritage values and a structure that would have a clear span across the creek and meet all of the kind of Melbourne water requirements as well. The pathway is framed by sunken planters, and these contain banksias and native flowering plants. And these are sections, sort of one through the void in the centre of the bridge and one through the planter, and you can sense that over time it'll be like you're walking through an arbour, which is what the original bridge did. So a little bit of planting, growing needs to happen here, but the semicircular voids also form calm moments to pause, sit, observe the movement of water below, so sort of seats, brick seats that wrap around that, and they can also be places to meet friends or family before or after a service. Over time, the plants will grow and form a natural arbour that crosses the bridge, and these are some more recent pictures. So you can see as the established planting. It's really important that we used colours, so our landscape architect, Claire Martin, specifically chose planting, which would reference the Aboriginal colours for Mourning. The circular openings are reflected and mirrored in the creek below. And brick balustrades change in height and porosity, and this is about filtering and revealing views to the landscape beyond. And that was a really important principle for Charles Heath as well, about being immersed in the landscape and kind of catching glimpses of things and not revealing everything, so moving away from a kind of a very strong axial relationship. And then as you view the bridge from afar, it was about catching glimpses of it within the landscape. So we wanted this kind of sense of the clarity when you're on the bridge, but the sense that it would camouflage within to the landscape when you view it within the park. During construction, the existing brick abutments were retained, and that was part of our negotiations with Heritage Victoria. But there was also a focus on executing a robust, expressive materials with care and detail. Jack drew every single brick on this project and did an extraordinary job of making sure the bricklayers, we had amazing bricklayers, and they just did a really great job. But you can see here that in terms of meeting those structural requirements, we went through a process. There's steel, and then there was concrete, and then there's blockwork, and then there's brick. And that's also too, this is a structure that needs a long lifespan, low maintenance, and while it needed to be a really robust piece of infrastructure, we also wanted it to be something that could be poetic and embedded within those natural and memorial landscape contexts that were really important for the client, the site and the visitors. The balustrades lift towards the chapel, and this is a directional device. It helps to provide direction to people as they arrive at what is an incredibly stressful time. And it's also a space for them to pause and reflect as they leave.